We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deepest questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. Let the light of our chalice remind us this is a community that welcomes multiple truths.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist virtual worship service. You are welcome here, whether you are a member, friend of the church, or simply a casual visitor. Unitarian Universalists draw from many different faith traditions and ideas in our search for meaning. We unite in our belief in the worth and dignity of everyone. We are an adventuresome faith called to grow both intellectually and spiritually, and empowered to commit acts of compassion and justice on life's journey. You may learn more about us on our church website or the website of our parent organization, the Unitarian Universalist Association. For today's service, we're going to think about the very nature of reality. Do we really know what we think we know? Is what we think we see what's really there? Why does one person see a hero, another a villain? Is it simply a matter of right and wrong? Or are there valid alternate realities? If so, then seeing the world as it truly is depends on us uncovering the pieces of it that we are missing. Take this journey with me.
Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part I seek. Let me be part of the love. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part I seek. Let me be part of the love. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part I seek. Let me be part of the love you give.
Hello, friends. How are you today? Are you wondering what might be in our Wonder Box today? I am. Let's see. Do you know what that was? Do you have a guess? If you thought of an elephant, you're correct. Today's story is The Wise People and the Elephant, and it comes from our third source, Wisdom from the World's Religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. It is a wisdom tale that comes from the Buddhist tradition. This version was written by Ralph Roberts and edited by Nita Penfold for Spirit Play. Our tale comes from a long, long time ago, during the time of a great teacher who told stories. The name we give this teacher is Buddha. It means enlightened one. We call him that because his stories can help us see things more clearly. It is as if these stories bring light into a dark room. Let us begin. There once was a ruler who often wondered about the great questions of life. They decided one day that they would set up a test, and they ordered that an elephant be brought into the throne room. After the elephant was brought into the palace and into the throne room, the ruler gave a second order. They ordered that the 5 wise people who taught at the gates of the city be brought to them. Each of the wise people happened to have been born blind. The ruler had each wise person placed so that they were able to feel a different part of the elephant's body. The ruler had the first wise person stand so that she could feel the elephant's tusk. and the second wise person was placed where he could hold the elephant's trunk. The ruler had the third person stand holding the elephant's ear. And they stood the fourth person right in front of the elephant so he could stand touching one of the creature's legs. The ruler then had the fifth and last wise person touch the elephant's tail. Then the ruler issued the challenge. They said, "You are each holding what we call an elephant. Now tell me what an elephant is." The wise person who was holding onto the elephant's tusk exclaimed, "An elephant is like a plow made of metal and sharpened to cut through the earth." The second wise person, who was in front of the elephant holding its trunk, said, "Hear my words. An elephant is like a great snake." And the third wise person, who was holding one of the elephant's large ears, said, "They're all wrong. An elephant is like a banana leaf." The fourth wise person, who was holding one of the elephant's legs, declared, "I tell you, an elephant is like the trunk of a giant tree." And the fifth wise person was holding the elephant's tail and said, "No, no, no, no. An elephant is like a paintbrush." Before long, the five blind wise people began arguing with each other, calling one another fool and crazy. They fought and fought, crying, "An elephant is like a tree. No, it's like a fan made from banana leaves. Any person with sense knows that an elephant is like a plow. They are like paintbrushes. Elephants are like snakes." "This," said the Buddha, "this is what truth is like." I wonder, what does truth mean to you? And I wonder which principle this story reminds you of. And with this, our story is told. Until the next time.
We take this moment to pause so we can create sacred space within our hearts, to reflect on the joys and sorrows that have come into our lives in recent days. Join me as we celebrate each other's milestones and pray with those who need our healing thoughts. We light a candle of sorrow for Ellen M. at the passing of her son Eric on Friday, August 21st. Eric was 33 years old, and he died of a heart attack. A family graveside service was held Monday in Queens, New York. Eric will be deeply missed, and we send our love and condolences to Ellen and to her family. We light a candle of concern and sorrow for the homophobic slur that was spoken on air by a Major League Baseball broadcaster. We value diversity of sexuality and gender and see these qualities as a spiritual gift. All of who you are is sacred. All of who you are is welcome. We light a candle of joy for Donna Z's family. Her son-in-law is finally home after a very long hospitalization and organ transplant. He joined his wife and daughters to complete his recovery in the comfort of their home. The journey will be slow and arduous, but all are optimistic. We salute Donna for being a rock to her family, and her wife Cindy for being a rock to Donna. We light another candle of joy for Sandra M.'s daughter Stephanie, who had a successful surgery for her breast cancer. We light birthday candles for Michael C., who celebrates his special day on September 1st. For Portia H., whose birthday is September 2nd, and for Anne Marie S., who celebrates her birthday September 4th. We light a candle to celebrate the wedding anniversary of Joyce and David J. on September 5th. And we light one last candle for all the joys and concerns that remain unspoken in our hearts. This church exists to create and nourish a loving community that seeks justice and respect for all. Your pledges support this mission so we can share our small embers to light a dark world, and for that we are most grateful. This month, as you know, we are donating our virtual plate collections to BBUUC's local partnership with UU The Vote. This is a nonpartisan faith-based group that's working in Florida to encourage voter engagement and to counter voter suppression. Your contributions will support our church's local postcard program through the end of October. Thank you for helping us to build an abundant future where all are free and flourishing.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race.
Our speaker, Phillip, is former pastor of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jacksonville, and he is past co-president of ICARE, the Interfaith Coalition for Action, Reconciliation, and Empowerment. He is co-founder of the virtual small group ministry Spiritophical, and he is also the host of the Phillip Baber podcast, which explores the intersection between faith and social justice. Phillip, thank you for joining us.
As the story goes, a Chirophon journeyed to Delphi, where he asked the oracle, "Who is the wisest of men?" The oracle replied, "There's none wiser than Socrates." When Socrates learned of the oracle's answer, he did not want to accept it, so he went on a quest to find someone wiser than he. After listening to the rhetoric and arrogant certainty of several so-called knowledgeable and wise men, Socrates concludes that neither he nor the other men he interviewed knew anything at all. But Socrates deems himself a little bit wiser than the others, because the other men, knowing nothing, still thought they knew many things, whereas Socrates knew he knows nothing. I think Socrates was onto something. One definition of knowledge is something that is known with certainty as being true, and certainty is key. Without certainty, knowledge is simply a belief, and certainty is difficult, if not impossible, to come by. For example, the vast majority of things we claim to know in life are based on the reports of other people whom we are forced to trust. How do I know that Mount Everest exists? How do I know that George Washington chopped down a cherry tree? How do I know that global warming is happening? I'm not personally in a position to be able to verify with complete certainty the absolute truth of any of those statements. Instead, I must trust the observations, conclusions, and reports of others. Explorers, scientists, historians. My knowledge is actually just a form of belief that is dependent upon the competency, the honesty, and sanity of others. In the relatively few cases where I try to acquire knowledge directly by looking at something or listening to something or smelling something, I simply cannot be certain that my observations are accurate or objectively true because of the subjective nature of my own existence and the fallibility of my own mental processes and my physical senses. So trust me, you can't trust your senses. Might you think otherwise? Remember that white and gold dress that broke the internet a few years ago? For those who don't recall, back in 2015, a photographed picture divided the world. Approximately 75% of people saw the dress as white and gold. About 25% saw it as blue and black. Turns out the actual dress in question was blue and black, meaning that 3/4 of the population saw it wrong. Now, astute observers will note that the color of the actual dress is frankly irrelevant. That's because none of us were looking at the actual dress. The real question is, what color was the image of the dress captured in the photo? And that image might objectively be white and gold. And thus, the white and golders, like me, might still be right. But of course, that question opens up another epistemological can of worms, because now we're forced to admit that our connection to the phenomena of objective reality is tenuous at best. All we ever see are images of things, not things themselves. Images are just reflections of light bouncing off objects and entering our eyes. Our eyes then take those reflections of light and translate them into bioelectrical impulses that the brain receives and interprets, converting the data into a hopefully accurate mental reproduction of external reality that our mind can understand. But I can never ascertain the thing in itself. I can't even really touch it. The atoms in my hand cannot even touch the atoms in any other thing because of this principle called electron repulsion. So it feels like I'm touching stuff all the time, but in actuality, I'm not. Every single thing in my existence that my mind thinks it's directly perceiving is actually just a sensation created by my brain and the nerves of my body. Theoretically, by properly triggering the appropriate parts of the brain, one could artificially replicate any physical sensation, any sensory perception. And that disquieting truth is why The Matrix made $1.6 billion at the worldwide box office. So, what do you know? What do any of us know? One of my favorite verses of poetry comes from Lord Alfred Tennyson's In Memoriam, a poetic and philosophical examination of questions related to life, death, religion, and science. And near the end of that rather long poem, Tennyson basically shrugs his shoulders and does his best Socrates impersonation as he declares, "Behold, we know not anything." And Tennyson hadn't even watched The Matrix. And even if we could fully trust our senses, we are literally blind and deaf to a staggering amount of our own reality. Human beings can only see about 2.3% of the light on the electromagnetic spectrum. We can only hear a fraction of all possible sound frequencies. Right now, this very instant, we are all surrounded by a silent cacophony of information traveling through the air in the form of Wi-Fi, cell phone signals, and radio waves. Data, conversations, songs are all going on all around us right now, and we can't hear any of it. But perhaps the most troubling fact is that our ability to perceive and acquire so-called knowledge about our external reality is limited by our ability to describe that reality. For several years now, scholars have been aware of a rather fascinating quirk of human development. It appears that some time ago, linguists and philologists made the discovery that almost every ancient language in the world, Greek, Hebrew, Chinese, Japanese, they had no word for the color blue. The word blue does not appear in the Bible, the Quran, ancient stories from Asia, Vedic hymns, Icelandic sagas. It does not appear in the works of Homer or any other ancient Greek text. This despite the fact that all of these texts contain all sorts of other colors. Philologist Lazarus Geiger noted a very odd pattern when studying the development of languages across the world. When it comes to color, nearly every language across the world has had the same evolutionary pattern. The first colors that appear in the development of every language are black and white, then red, then yellow, then green. The very last color to appear in every language is blue. As absurd as this might sound, this discovery has led some researchers to conclude that the color blue is actually a relatively modern invention, and that our ancient ancestors couldn't see the color blue, at least not like we do. See, it turns out that if you do not have a word or a label or a mental category for something, such as the color blue, then you don't really see it. At least not as well as others who do have a word or a label or a category for it. There's a tribe in Namibia called the Himba. Their language has no word for the color blue. A researcher showed the Himba a picture of 12 different squares. Now, 11 of the squares were the same. They were green. One square was clearly, to our eyes at least, clearly blue. When the researcher asked the Himba which square was a different color, by and large, they couldn't do it. Now, there were a few Himba that could, but even they really had to struggle to find it. The takeaway for all of us is this. Our minds have difficulty perceiving things, real things, in the real world that we don't have vocabulary to describe or existing mental categories for. So you see, our minds have been conditioned by our culture to see certain things and not see other things. As the Himba have difficulty seeing the color blue, many of us in America may have difficulty seeing the color white, as in white privilege, for example. Many people, especially those who have benefited from it their entire lives, simply cannot see it, and therefore refuse to accept the reality of its existence. This form of cultural blindness is not limited to color. I have no idea what it's like to live as a woman. I can only guess what it feels like. For my entire life, I've benefited, socially speaking, from being a man in ways that I literally cannot perceive. I have benefited as a straight person, living in a heteronormative culture where my identity is privileged. I'm sure I have benefited from being straight, but I don't see it on a regular basis. So I can only wonder what other things I have been blind to because of the way my culture has conditioned me. What nuances have I missed? What beautiful traditions and traits and aesthetics of other races, other cultures, other philosophies and religions have I utterly failed to see? Is it possible that I have lived my whole life beneath a beautiful expanse of sky, but never saw that it was blue? If we truly wish to be free to seek and acquire knowledge and truth, then we're going to have to work to earn our freedom. We must break the shackles of our own cultural conditioning. To see our reality more clearly, we must each make the choice to evolve beyond our cultural biases and our mental programming and actually expand our vocabularies. So to that end, I'm going to suggest 3 quarantine-friendly things you can do this week. First, read a book or a magazine or a news article from a publication that you would normally not choose to read. One from a perspective that is different from your own. A second thing, watch a TV show or a movie from a country or a culture that is foreign to you, one that you didn't plan to watch this week. And third, you can listen to a song from a genre, subculture, or historical period that you generally don't listen to. Our ability to acquire knowledge, especially of each other, is severely curtailed by the cultural constructs we are shackled with from birth onward. By purposefully exposing ourselves to stimuli outside the box of our cultural conditioning, we begin to lay the foundation for new psychological constructs and new categories. We expand our cultural vocabulary. In doing so, we put ourselves in a position to truly see each other, especially those different from us, perhaps for the very first time. Many of you may have seen James Cameron's 2009 movie Avatar. It's a sci-fi flick about an alien race called the Na'vi. Now, the Na'vi are a relatively enlightened culture at one and at peace with each other and their natural world. Their skin also happens to be blue. The Na'vi have a unique greeting they use whenever they run into one another. Translated into English, the greeting is, "I see you." I think James Cameron was onto something when he came up with that greeting. One of the most important things we can learn to do in our short time on this planet is to learn to truly, actually see each other and also ourselves. It may be the case that all else flows from that. So, let us strive to have eyes to see and ears to hear one another. Let us not spend a lifetime under the sky and fail to recognize and appreciate the color blue. Blessed be.
Our closing words are from the book On Beyond Zebra by Dr. Seuss. You can stop if you want at the letter Z, because most people stop at the Z, but not me. I'm telling you this because you're one of my friends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends. And there's no limit to how much you'll know, depending how far beyond zebra you go. May it be so. Namaste, peace be with you.